Oh, 1 second. Let me set up my headphones. Okay, I'm all set. So I'm gonna give a breakdown on where we are right now as far as the progress, how we're going to handle the migration, and then I'm gonna take some questions that have been submitted to Twitter. So if you go to the Forex Calls channel, you'll see not the last post that was made, because that was one just saying that we're about to go live here, but the one before that. There's a link to a Twitter post and you can write questions in there and I'll get to them. I don't know how many questions there are. I'll try to get to as many as possible. And Bartertown could not be available right now, but I know there's at least one other person recording this, so I'll get whoever's recording it, and I'll get a copy of the recording and get it up on a few channels, and I'll promote whoever's channel records it. So I'm just gonna give it, say, 2 more minutes to let people come in here, and then we'll get it started. We've made a lot of progress. I'm not sure how much pigs have been sent in. I know yesterday it was looking really good. We need enough pigs and enough pigs LP to be able to remove all of the liquidity from the one pig's liquidity pool and to remove all of the capital from the pig pen. This way, we can migrate the pig pen capital over to the new pig pen contract, and we can migrate the liquidity for the V1 pigs token to the new pigs contract. We have no special controls over the pig pen or the piggy bank or the pigs token, other than the ability to pause. So we don't even have that ability on the pig pen or the piggy bank, just on the pigs token. And we kept that ability to pause because we knew we still had further contracts to launch, and it was an additional security check just in case something unexpected happened. So people who are part of Manor Farm saw how we launched. We had pause functionality for the Rev token, and we burned that functionality shortly after launch, within 24, 48 hours after launch. We have those same mechanics in the dogs token and the pig tokens, and we utilize those pause functions to prevent botting when we initially launched the dog and pig tokens. So we did that by disabling selling, listing the token, allowing snipers to come in and bot it, pausing, and blacklisting their tokens. Now, the idea was, and this is an agreement we made with Paladin and other auditors we worked with, that we would burn that functionality to pause the token after we were finished with the launch process. With with the pigs token and the launch of the animal farm, we never launched any incentive contracts to reward people for locking up pigs liquidity. And we knew we were going to do that. And our idea was to launch something similar to Piggybank. So we decided, well, hold off on removing the pause function until after we launched this additional contract to incentivize pigs liquidity adding, just in case something unexpected happens, we could put the brakes on it and address it. And because we had these extra safety and security protocols, we were able to put the brakes on the pigs token and Piggybank before it was able to be essentially drained. Now, the reason why it would have been able to drain is because when we launched the Piggybank, before it goes live, you have to choose an exchange rate. Now, most other projects that have this kind of internal DEX, like Shrimp Farmer, like B&B Miner, all of these projects, they actually, the developer or insiders actually do the initial deposit on the contract. This gives them half of the supply and sets the exchange rate. And this means that if this developer or if this insider wanted to, within a couple weeks, through compounding, we'll have 90+% of the supply and can drain the contract. So with Piggybank and with Drip Garden, we changed this. So instead of actually adding that starting liquidity, which would give the developers half of the supply, we created a mechanic that allows you to fool the contract into thinking it got capital deposited into it. And it sets the exchange rate based on what it thinks you deposited into it. And this then gets the initial pricing for pigs, or in Piggybank, sorry. It gets the initial pricing for piglets and truffles. Now, the starting capital or the starting seed amount that we chose with Piggybank was the same starting seed amount as we did with Drip Garden. And with Drip Garden, it worked extremely well. The reason why it worked extremely well with Drip Garden is because people went into the contract normally, right? People just, people bought what they thought was a reasonable amount for them to buy, given the risk and all these things, and it was relatively small amounts. And this worked very well because, yes, people that bought it early got it for cheap, but they didn't go in buying, millions of dollars worth 1 second after launch. And when we had to decide the starting seed amount for Piggybank, it was one of the last things we left to decide. And this is mostly because we had a new developer working for us. My main partner, BB, needed a break. So he took a break, but we still needed him because, he's an integral part of the project. He manages the servers. He does all that stuff. And it made communication a bit more difficult because we had someone brand new on the team. Plus, my main partner was taking a break. So when it came time to add the final, or when it came time to decide what the starting seed amount would be, it was essentially on the day of launch. and we were going back and forth on essentially my position was that we should do a high starting seed amount because there's a lot more attention on our project and a lot more capital to come in, and it's essentially like starting with a higher liquidity. And I knew we would need to do that. But since you can only buy a whole piglet, and if you compound, you can only compound if it's a whole piglet, starting with a higher seed amount meant that the price of piglets would be higher, which would make it so the smaller user couldn't compound and wouldn't be able to buy. So this was essentially BB's point. Like, his opinion was no, we shouldn't start with a higher seed amount because it's going to be unfair for small users and eventually unsustainable potentially, because none of the small users would be able to buy or compound, right? And then the new dev that we brought on, he kind of stayed out of it, although he suggested a higher seed amount before. But when he heard BB's argument, he just kind of stayed out of it. So we decided to default with what we knew worked because we were on the day of deadline, essentially. So we decided to go with what we knew had worked with Drip Garden. And we used the same amount, the same seeding amount as we did with Drip Garden. And it would have worked if it wasn't botted as heavily as it was. So both me and my partner BB both had the correct idea. And if we had not set a deadline and been rushed to meet this deadline, we would have realized what we need to do is raise the seed amount, but also increase the supply of piglets relative to truffles. This way, it never costs more than a fraction of a cent worth of truffles to buy a piglet. This way, you never have to worry about smaller users being able to afford a whole piglet, even if the starting truffle supply is higher. So, essentially, it was us going with what we knew worked in the past, and really trying to meet a deadline that we should have said we need an extra day or two, right? If we had an extra day or two, we would have gone with a higher seed amount and increased the piglet supply. This is something we've learned from, right? It's a lesson learned. We will never do that again. We will never make a deadline for anything until 100% of the development is finished and 100% of every little detail is figured out. So what I've been doing is when we're, say, 90% of the way finished, I'll set a deadline. And it's worked okay, but what ends up inevitably happening is that last 10% that you have to do is always the part that ends up being the most difficult. And then you end up cramming to get it done while you have a deadline creeping up on you. And it becomes extremely stressful. And this is when potential mistakes could happen, right? So we built in security and safety protocols just in case something unexpected did happen, so we could put the brakes on everything and do a migration. And it's a very good thing we did this because we're able to now do the migration and secure all of the investor capital and not have that capital lost to people that would otherwise exploit the system. So I wanted to give a brief description on the issue, how we got to the issue, what we learned from it, and why it will never happen again. And that's essentially my breakdown of it. Now, if we had not been bonded, it would have the launch would have been just like Drip Garden, and everything would have been functioning perfectly just like Drip Garden. The initial people that bought early would have got a much better price for being early, but we have other mechanics that reduce the price as time goes on, and through the inflation of piglets and the inflation of truffles, this makes it so it's always fair for new capital to come in, but it takes time for this inflation to happen. So if you have people interacting with normally, buying, amounts like they did in Drip Garden, then the people that buy first, yeah, they get a good deal, but as more capital comes in, as the day goes on, additional participants are getting a good deal as well, because as every day goes on, the price of piglets and truffles, or Drip Garden seed and plants, is reducing every day as divs are paying out, right? So it offsets that price impact of the initial buyers. The fact that they bought it so hard made it so their advantage was too large to be offset by the mechanics that make it so it's more fair for new players to come in. So where I'm someone that I believe that DeFi, there are certain fundamental practices that you need to keep in DeFi, right? The system should not be exploitable by insiders. The developer should not be able to access the liquidity pool without the cooperation of the community. And several more. But there's always going to be some element of centralization in any project. And most often it's in marketing and promotion, right? But if you're going to have some element of centralization in your project, which all DeFi projects have, you want it to be centralization that can be used to protect investor capital, but cannot be used to exploit the system for insiders or remove liquidity. And that's exactly what we built into all of our protocols. So with the PIGS token, we're able to pause the token. This way, the botters that initially bought the Piggybank can't remove liquidity. It can't dump the token. But we need the full cooperation of the community in order to remove the liquidity so we can migrate it over. And this is why we're having people send in their PIGs and PIG LP tokens so we can use them to remove liquidity. Now, to incentivize people to sending in these tokens, we're using a credit system. So when people send in their tokens, they get credited. And this means they will get the V2 PIGS token. So if you are holding one PIG token in your wallet, one V1 PIG token in your wallet, you send it in, you will get credited one V2 PIG token. Now, the way that we're going to do the distribution is based on where those tokens were before we paused. So if you had the pig tokens in your wallet, the V1 pig tokens, when we paused the pig contract, and you sent it into credits, when we do the V2 distribution, you'll get it to your wallet. If you had the pig token in the pig pen when we paused pigs, in order to get credited with the V2 token, you have to withdraw those pigs from the pig pen and send them into the credit contract. But when we do the V2 distribution, you'll get those V2 pigs sent to the new pig pen contract, and you'll be credited in the new pig pen contract. This way, when we launch V2, it will be the exact state of all of the V1 pigs contracts, with the only alteration being that the the Piggybank distribution of piglets will be different, and I'll explain on how it will be different and why it will be different. And a very small amount of bonders will not be credited. It's so far only 2. So we've gone through the whole system, and only 2 people will not be credited. And both of those people used bots to snipe the Piggybank open, and we're using scripts to only dump the token. So that's literally all they were doing. They sent like $500 million or $500,000. They were like the first or second people to get filled on the pig pen, and then they're just using a script to just dump it every day, dump their holdings every day. And anybody that's been a part of our projects for any amount of time, has read any of our documentation or listened to any of our interviews, we don't put up with that. Our protocols are designed to be fair and to give all users an equal opportunity in the system. And sure, people could say that they're not breaking any laws by using bots, but they're breaking the rules of our system that we made clear before we listed or launched anything. Same as the pigs contract, same as Rev, same as Drip, same as every project I've done since we've had the kind of attention on us that will attract botters. We've always had the stance that if you bought our contracts, and if you try to get around any of our anti-bot measures, you will be blacklisted. And people understand this. The people that I know the 2 people who bought it, Piggybank, I know who they are. They're people that have been part of my projects in the past. They know very well what the consequences would be for doing this, and they they did it anyways, because sometimes people are just greedy, right? They want to risk it, and and they took a shot. But there will never be a scenario where 1 or 2 people try to exploit one of our protocols, and then we just sit back and let them do it. That will never happen. So we put the measures in place. The reason why we needed to pause the animal farm as well is because we had no pause functionality in Piggybank. We only had a pause functionality in the pig token, and when you pause the pig token, it pauses the whole animal farm. This is the only reason why we needed to pause animal farm. Otherwise, we would have allowed animal farm to continue as operational. We're always learning lessons. We're always getting better. Another lesson that I learned from this is no matter what pressure we may have from auditors or reviewers or some of these people, we're gonna always do what we feel is best for the project. And it would have been best to put a pause function in the Piggybank contract itself. We didn't do it because we knew some auditors would frown upon it. But in the end, we're not really looking to impress auditors, right? Our business is about securing and protecting investor capital and providing investment opportunities for them. So, these are things that we've learned and will implement in the future, right? As we continue to grow and develop. But as far as Piggybank goes, we have everything in place that we need to do the migration and have a very successful migration. So the way that we're going to do the distribution of piglets in V2 is with a higher starting seed amount. So as I talked about when I first got on here, there was a back and forth about starting with a higher seed amount versus keeping the piglet price low so smaller users can always afford to buy at least one piglet because of the limitations of these contracts that prevent you from being able to buy fractions of piglets in this case, or plants in Drip Garden. I could go into detail about why this is the case as well. I'll do it briefly. I don't want to get too much into details because I know some people won't understand it and will get confused by them. But with this protocol and with Drip Garden and even with like B&B Miner and Shrimp Farmer type of protocols, you have two assets. You have an asset that determines your exchange rate for the capital on the contract, and this would be truffles. And then you have an asset which determines your ROI, your daily ROI in the system. Now, in order to do decimals in Solidity, you have to use something called padding. And this is where you use a multiplier to increase whatever value you have to such a degree that that you can round it up without causing a major deviation from the actual starting value that was a decimal. For example, say you have a decimal that's 6.3339, right? You could multiply that by 1,000, round it off, so you have 6,334, so 6,334, and now you're not working with decimals anymore because Solidity can't work with decimals. And now, after you do your calculations and your formula in Solidity, you divide it on the other side of the calculation to now bring it back to the smaller value that it was before you pad it. And this is how you deal with decimals in Solidity. Now, truffles needs to have decimals because it's a regular token, like an exchange token. But uh, but piglets determine the ROI that you get on that day. And if you padded piglets and the amount of piglets that you were supposed to get after they were padded, when you divide it back down on the other side, if it rounds to less than 1, it will be 0. So you end up with the same issue, right? And it's because you're using 2 assets. So no matter what tricks you use in Solidity, like padding, that you typically use to utilize decimals in Solidity, if you try to utilize those for piglets, you still have the situation where if it's less than 1, it will round to 0. It would be 0 anyways. So people, a lot of people were suggesting or asking us to, allow for people to buy fractions of piglets. It's not possible due to the limitations of Solidity. So I tried to explain that as simply as possible without getting like very deep into the details and the math of it. But what you can do is greatly increase the supply of piglets relative to truffles. This way, it will only ever cost a tiny fraction of a cent worth of truffles to ever buy a piglet. And this way, you still won't be able to buy a fraction of a piglet, but the cost barrier to buying one piglet is so low that no one will ever run into that issue. So this is the solution that we came up with that is going to work very well and will be implemented into V2 of Piggybank. This way, even the smallest user won't have to worry about not being able to compound or not being able to buy it. So this is one important improvement that we made to V2. And secondly is the distribution of piglets. So as I spoke to earlier, with all of these other contracts that have 2 assets, one that determines the exchange rate for capital on the contract and one that determines the daily ROI, they come up with the initial starting exchange rate based on what the developers initially deposit into the contract. When they make that initial deposit onto the contract, they get half of the starting supply for whatever they deposit, and then that's the exchange rates that's set. Whatever they deposited, and the other half of the starting supply is now in that liquidity pool. This means that they now have half the starting supply, and this is why all of these other projects have been drained so quickly, because the developers and insiders that use that half of the supply to compound end up with 95, 90, or 90+% of the supply within a week or two, and then drain the system. We didn't want that kind of centralization in our project, because this is the kind of centralization which you don't want in DeFi. The kind of centralization that allows for insiders to exploit the protocol and drain the system. So we came up with a protocol that allows us to essentially trick the contract into thinking we made a deposit. And then the capital that we tricked it into thinking we deposited now sets the exchange rate for anybody that comes in after. So we use the same starting seed amount that we use for Drip Garden, which worked very well with Drip Garden. And the reason why it worked very well is because we have multiple mechanics that reduce the price of the two assets on the contract every day. And this means that, yes, when you buy early, you get a good price, but every day, the value of those tokens is reduced a bit. And this is how we're able to have a protocol where if you compound daily, you can earn up to 3%. But if you are not compounding, your ROI is going to be reduced relative to people that are compounding. And it creates a value transfer from weak hands to strong hands. So with Drip Garden, since it was not botted, the initial buyers got a good price, of course, which you would want to have. And then every day, the mechanics played out to make it fair for new capital coming on. With Piggybank, this would have worked as well, except for the fact that the initial botters bought in so hard that the advantage they would have had was too much, and the mechanic that offsets the price impact by reducing the price every day to make it fair for new buyers was not enough to offset the advantage they got through botting the contract. So the solution to this, right, is first to blacklist those botters, which they knew it would happen. You know, they took a risk, but as I said earlier, with all my projects, we make it very clear that if you attempt to get around our anti-bot protocols and attempt to bot the contract, we will blacklist you. So blacklisting these two botters alone does a great deal to make the rest of the distribution a lot more fair. And this is because the capital that the initial botters deposited, once their tokens have been blacklisted, is equivalent to starting with a higher liquidity or starting with a higher seed amount. The same way we did with pigs by blacklisting those botters, and that allowed us to start with starting liquidity of, I can't remember, 8 million or something instead of 3 million. So what we're going to do is we're going to blacklist those two botters, and then we're running simulations right now that take all of the buys and all of the sells, or all of the buys and all the withdrawals that took place from the block of launch to the block that we paused. We've pulled all of this data. We're including referral bonuses, and all of this is going to be migrated over. And then we recreated the launch of Piggybank, but with a higher seed price. And what this means is, just like if you start with a higher starting liquidity, the price impact of buyers is less. Which means the people who bought don't get less. They just affect the price less, so the people that buy after them get more. So this allows for a much more fair distribution, and it will result in the vast majority, over 90% of the users in the system, to get more than they had before we paused. And right now we've pulled all of the data, and we're preparing to start running the simulations today. It's taken a lot of time to pull the data because it's something like 20,000 different different accounts and many more buys and sells. So it takes a long time to pull that kind of data and then create maps that allow you to then recreate all of those transactions accurately in a simulation. But what we're going to do is take all of the transactions, all of the buys, all of the sells, all of the referral bonuses, everything, and then just simulate them in a type of sandbox environment with the Piggybank contracts as if we started with a much higher seed amount. And this will give us the distribution for everybody, how much piglets everybody in the system should have got if we had a higher seed amount. And then we will distribute these piglets in version 2 of Piggybank. So, as I said, it will result in the vast majority of users, like over 90%, getting more. So, the only people that are going to see a negative impact from this are the two botters. Other than that, there will be a very small handful of people that will get slightly less piglets relative to other players of the system than what they had before we paused, but they'll still benefit from this in the long run, because if we had not done this, botters would have drained the piggy bank within a couple weeks. So it's for the vast majority of users, you'll end up with more piglets than you had before the distribution. And for the small handful of people that will get slightly less, and it will only be slightly less, because the vast majority of this value transfer is coming from those botters. You know, it will be better for them in the long run, because say you get 10% less piglets, but now you're part of a protocol that will last for years and continue to allow to grow and earn on it for the whole life of the system instead of draining out. So, it can be difficult to get points like this across to some people, but if for the very few people that will have less piglets than more, would you rather have 10% more piglets, but the ROI that those piglets allow you to earn from is drained in a week or two? Or would you rather have 10% less piglets and be able to earn an ROI on those piglets for the whole life of the system for months and years to come? So I believe that when the system goes live, everybody sees the distribution that they got, they will be happy with it, and the piggy bank is still going to be an extremely successful protocol, because the mechanics of it are extremely powerful, and it's the only product that allows for this type of investment where you're getting rewarded in such a way for time locking. So we'll be migrating everything over. If you were in the piggy bank when we paused the piggy bank, and you can withdraw your LP tokens, you need to withdraw those LP tokens and send them into the credit contract in order to get credited in V2 Piggybank. Any LP tokens that you can't withdraw, you will be credited because we have the ability to credit everybody, essentially. But we also need the incentive to get people to send in the PIG tokens and the PIG LP tokens so we can use those tokens to migrate the liquidity. Because we have no ability to mint tokens. We have no ability to remove liquidity. We need those PIGs and PIG LP tokens to be able to do it. So if you cannot remove those LP tokens because they're time locked or because you can only withdraw your up to 3% a day, that's fine. We accounted for all of the LP tokens that won't be able to be removed because of these issues, and the people that hold the piglets and truffles that are represented by those LP tokens will be credited for them. But if you have the ability to remove LP tokens, you need to do it, or else you will not be credited with those. And like I said, we needed to do that because we need to ensure that people will send them in order to do this this migration. So when we go live, we're going to give a bonus for anybody that deposits fresh capital in the first 24 to 48 hours. Right? I'll announce it as we get closer to launch. And this is just an extra incentive and bonus to kickstart things. So whatever the exchange rate is when we go live, we're going to add a 10 to 20% bonus on top of this for anybody that gets in the first 24, 48 hours. This way, we can kick it right off with a major increase in contract balance, and really just get things rolling full steam ahead again. So, and I truly believe once people start seeing what they're able to earn in the system, it's gonna blow up, right? Because there's nothing else like it in DeFi, and of course, there's no real need to keep going over it. But of course, I wish that we didn't have this issue, right? Where the starting seed amount was not as high as it should have been. But it's a lesson learned, and the lesson learned wasn't specific to this issue, right? Because as I said, me and my partners had a conversation about this before launch, and we decided to go with what worked with Drip Garden, which would have worked here if we did not get a couple botters sending millions of dollars to the contract within the first second, right? Which is something that it's something that we could have avoided. And really it comes down to not setting deadlines until 100% of the work is done. This way you are not making this kind of decision when there's hours left to go before launch. And it led us to fall back on what we knew worked with Drip Garden, which would have worked here if we did not get botted to such a degree. But the answer is the solution to this is that deadline shouldn't have been set. And if that deadline wasn't counting down, and we had an extra day to just give this a little bit of extra thought and work out the conversation we were having before launch, we would have made the adjustment. And and just never again, right? We will never make a deadline and cause that kind of pressure to meet the deadline before all the work is finished ever again, right? So, and if we had done that, this would have been avoidable. And we will never have this kind of issue again, right? So there's still so much left to build. I have so much more I want to build, right? We have a major NFT partnership with who I believe to be the best NFT platform in crypto, right? They're on the verge of launching a major metaverse project with VR and all kinds of really high end stuff. We still have a major partnership with them to go. We have a lottery system to build for the animal farm. We have a play to earn game that I really want to get launched. There's a lending and insurance protocol that I really want to build. So we still have so much to build, and so much to do. And from this point on, I will never set a deadline on anything until 100% of the work is finished. This way, we will never run into this issue again where we're making a decision hours before launch, right? Now, thankfully, we had the security measures put in place just in case something unexpected did happen. We could put the brakes on it and do a migration before any capital was drained. And because of that, we're still in a very good position, right? We just need to do the migration, have a major, relaunch event or whatever you want to call it when V2 goes live, with a significant bonus for anybody that deposits fresh capital in, get our marketing going, and we'll be off to the races, right? So the reason why I haven't been going heavy on marketing right now is because I don't want to, be marketing a product that is non-functional, right? I want people to see our ads and to see our marketing and then be able to get right into a functional product. So we still have millions of dollars for marketing. We have very good ads, and we still have a ton of development to do. We just need to get this migration through with. And as some people here that are developers know, it's always a lot more tedious to try to fix issues. And it's after you've had something like this happen, right? But with that said, we have everything that we need to do it. We've pulled all the information. We're prepared to start running the simulations today to come up with the new distribution rates, and the pigs and pig LPs are being sent in. Last I checked, we were on path to getting the amount that we need to do the migration. I haven't looked at today. I wouldn't be surprised if we're already past what we need today. So everything is perfect for the migration, and we're ready to go with as soon as the migration is finished, just to go full steam ahead into marketing and continued development. So I think that's without having someone, I wanted to have Bartertown on. He's not around, so it's a little bit difficult for me to go over everything without having someone to bounce off of, bounce questions off of, and all of that. So I'll get someone on. We'll do this again. We'll definitely do this again before Tuesday. Tuesday is the cutoff date for when you need to send in your LP tokens and pigs. But for now, let me start going into some of these Twitter questions. I'm sure there's plenty of them. Okay. It's a lot of people just very happy and excited. Okay. So insane mooning soon. That's okay. Here we go. Here's the real question. Okay. I have some dogs LP in pools. Okay. It says I have some dog LP pools in the and Pigpen. Some of these people, like, I don't know where they learned to write, but it says, what do I have to do? I have some dogs, LP pools, and Pigpen. I can't do anything. I just chill. But when is this fixed? Okay, so I basically understand what he's saying. So if you have dog LPs staked in the core contracts, what we're going to do is the pigs that you had that were available to claim in the core farms and pools, those pigs will be migrated over to a new contract, and you will have to take your dog LP tokens that you have in the current contract and withdraw them and deposit them onto the new contract. Now, all of the non-core farms and pools that pay out in dogs, you don't have to touch them at all. And those, when we go live, we'll just start up again, start paying dogs again, like nothing ever happened. The only migration in the farms and pools that need to take place are the core farms and pools, and this is because they pay out pigs, so it's a different Master Chef contract. We have two Master Chef contracts on the animal farm. One that pays out dogs, one that pays out pigs. The one that pays out dogs is the non-core farms and pools. And this, nothing needs to change or be done about this. The core ones that pay out pigs, we do have to change this because it can only pay out V1 pigs. We needed to pay out V2 pigs. So we need a new contract, a new Master Chef contract. So the way it will work is if you have a current stake in the core farms or pools with claimable pigs, you need to claim those pigs and you need to send them into the credits contract using the front end. Now, when V2 Pigs goes live, you will have to withdraw your dog LP tokens and dogs from the old Master Chef contract and deposit them into the new Pigs Master Chef contract. And when you do this, you will be credited with V2 Pigs that you had available to claim in V1. In order to get credited, though, you have to withdraw those V1 pigs from the current farms and pools. So I hope that explains it. I know without having a front end to interact with and something to visualize, it might be a little bit difficult. But when we actually do the migration process when it's going to go live, it'll be way more apparent because we'll have a front end dashboard that allows you to withdraw from the old one and deposit into the new one. And like I said, in order to get credited pigs, V2 pigs in the new contracts, you need to send in your V1 pigs into the credit contract. Now you need to withdraw them and send them into the credit contract. Wherever you had those V1 pigs, when the pigs token was paused, is where you'll be credited. So if your V1 pigs were available for you to claim in the farm when the pigs token was paused, as long as you withdraw them now and send them into the credit contract, when V2 goes live, those V2 pigs will be credited, available for you to withdraw in the new Master Chef contract. So that's the way that will go. We're going to make it as simple for everybody as possible. You won't have to interact directly with the contracts on BSC Scan or anything like that. It'll be a dashboard on the site. You'll have to click a couple buttons, and that will be it. So let me just keep going. Okay, someone's saying that they withdrew their pigs, BUSD, LP tokens, and tried to remove liquidity, and it didn't work. Yeah. This is because we had to pause the pig contract to prevent the botters from dumping or removing liquidity. So if you have, say, a paused token and someone holds LP tokens, they can still remove liquidity and essentially drain the system. So if this person who bought it, Piggybank, had LP tokens, we could blacklist that wallet, but we can't blacklist LP tokens because LP tokens are pancake swap tokens. We don't have deployer control over them. We can only blacklist pigs, which means if we blacklisted a wallet that bought us, he could then wait a minute. Let me just mute this person. He could then just move those LP tokens to a new wallet and remove liquidity with them or dump them. So we had to actually pause the token itself. And this and then once we paused the token, we were able to put everything in place to allow for the migration and put limitations in place to prevent people from removing liquidity or dumping. This is so the botter who holds enough liquidity tokens to remove millions of dollars from the liquidity pool can't do it. So we have we put those limitations in place so we could do the migration, and all of the LP. The reason why, instead of taking those LP tokens and trying to remove liquidity with them, you have to send them into the credit contract, is so that we can then use those tokens and LPs to migrate the liquidity to V2 and then credit you on there. And then once we credit you on there, you can do whatever you want with them. But we had to take these steps to prevent the two botters from removing liquidity. So if you could just remove liquidity and sell the tokens, and we had a way to blacklist those two botters, then we wouldn't do this at all, right? We would, or maybe we would, I don't know. But at that point, people can make up their own mind what they want to do, if they want to remove liquidity or get credited, right? the fact that we have no ability to blacklist specific holders because it's LP tokens means we have to put these restrictions on everybody and then credit people with a version 2. So, okay, that's about it. It's just a bunch of people asking if it's paused or not, basically, and I just explained that. So, people asking for an ETA for the same reason why I just went into how we're not going to put deadlines on ourselves, just to put ourselves in a situation where now we're pressured to meet a deadline and, end up, doing something when we're not ready. I'm not going to do that. But I can say that all of the data has been pulled. We're starting the simulations today. We should definitely be done by Tuesday. By Tuesday, that's the deadline on when you need to send in your LP tokens and pigs to get credited. And likely on Tuesday, we'll have everything finished that we need to be done to do the migration. And the plan is to get it done by the end of the week, by the end of next week. So I mean that's I guess that's an ETA, but from now on I'm gonna be very, very careful about doing countdowns and deadlines until everything is 100% done. And I already had these kind of restrictions on myself, but the way I would do it is when things are 90% done, that's when we do it, start a countdown. And what happens is that last 10% ends up being the thing that gives you the most difficulty. That's why it's the last thing to do often. And I'm just never going to put myself in that situation again. Because, as I said, with Piggybank, we got put in that situation where we had a deadline. We had to pick the starting seed amount. We knew that if it was too low, it could cause an issue with bonders, but we knew if it was too high, then small accounts wouldn't be able to compound, which means they couldn't be able to claim their time locking bonus, and it just wouldn't. It would break the system for all small users. And because we had like an hour left before launch, we decided to go with what worked with Drip Garden. And it would have worked very well with Piggybank as well if we didn't get botted to such a large degree. Now, we have, just like with the Animal Farm launch, we had mechanics in place. So if we got botted, it would pause before capital could be drained. So we could then remove those botters and do a migration. And that means that we're still looking very good because everything is put in place to do the migration. That capital can't be drained. We can start with a higher seed amount. We've solved the issue with small users not being able to compound, and we're ready to go. And we're going to start it off with new deposits, getting a discount just to really put some jet fuel on the launch, get a lot of new capital deposited on day one. So likely we're going to have a 10 to 20% bonus for people that deposit new capital in the first 48 hours. That's what we're looking at right now. And as far as the migration and the distribution, as far as pigs go and pigs LP, everybody will get the same amount of pigs and pig LPs that you had on V1. And it will be credited to you wherever you had it when it was paused. That is if you send in the pig and pig LP tokens to the credit contract. If not, you will not be credited with V2. And as far as piglets, we're taking all of the deposits that everybody made and all of the withdrawals that everybody made, and we're simulating them in the order that they bought on a new Piggybank contract with a higher seed amount to see how those piglets would be distributed with a higher seed amount minus the 2 botters. And then we will distribute those piglets using this formula. We're not including compounding. So any compounding that took place in the first 3 days is not being included. Why? It's because smaller users were not able to compound. And that would be unfair if we are crediting the bigger users with what they compounded and not the smaller users. So the only factors that we're taking into account here with this new distribution is how much you deposited and how much you withdrew. So if you deposited say 1,000 LP tokens, you will get 1,000 LP tokens worth of piglets given the new distribution. And what that means is 90+% of users will end up with more piglets relative to what they had on V1 of Piggybank, because it's a more fair distribution. And the only people that will really be affected, they will get less piglets, is the 2 botters, because they will get nothing. And the people that bought within about the first 10 seconds. And those people that bought within the first 10 seconds will not be getting significantly less piglets, and they could potentially get more. And the reason for this is because the 2 botters are getting taken out. And that really means that everybody else will get a lot more. So not only will people get more piglets, the whole system's way more sustainable because you don't have a very small handful of people able to drain the whole thing in the first couple of weeks. So I'm extremely confident in it. You know, this is a little bump in the road. I understand that, and I take responsibility for it. But we have everything we need to move forward, right? It's an awesome product. It's an awesome contract. We have a very strong community. We have a huge investor base. We have all the exposure we need. We're gonna kick it off with a discounted rate for people that deposit fresh capital in the first 48 hours. We'll have a huge promotional event around that. And then when people see the kind of capital they're earning and the power of the contract, we're gonna blow up. And the lottery, right? We're gonna have the lottery, which takes the pigs that are, so there's a dev fee, or what you could call it a dev fee. It more accurately would be a platform fee because it's not actually going to the developers. But there's a fee on deposits and withdrawing from the piggy bank. This is to disincentivize people from withdrawing and redepositing, right? What it does is it's always more beneficial to do initial deposit and then compound that initial deposit and set up additional stakes than it is to create one account and then self-refer with another account and then self-refer with another account and doing chains of self-referring because there's a deposit and withdrawal fee that would outweigh the referral bonus that you would get. So this is why this was put in place. But as people know, I never pay a dev fee to myself in native tokens because that would mean in order to monetize it, I would need to sell our own tokens, and I never sell our native assets. It's just never a way that I like to monetize any of my projects. It's just it just everything about it turns me off. So the pigs that are generated from this dev fee, instead of going to developers, are going to a contract which will be used in a lottery. And this lottery will allow you to buy tickets in drip, dogs, and pigs. And it will be a daily payout. We'll utilize Chainlink as an oracle to do true randomness, and ensure that it's secure and not exploitable like all these other lottery protocols that are not utilizing an oracle have been. And oftentimes these other lottery protocols have been exploitable, and no one even knows they're being exploited. They just get the same person from a different account winning every time, and people don't notice. But anyways, let me just go through the chat real quick. And it's difficult doing this without having without having someone to read the questions and go kind of field the questions for me. But let me just take a quick look. Yeah, discounted rate for fresh capital entering the piggy bank in the first 48 hours after launch. Yep. So can someone ask if extra piglets go into current, multiple stakes, or into wallet? I have no idea what that means. Piglets are an internal asset. They don't go into wallets at all. So you'll be credited with piglets in the new piggy bank contract. All right, it says someone saying they can't remove their pigs earned. You should be able to. Meaning in the farms and pools. People are. I can see that a lot of people are. Someone right. The worth of piglets went from $60 to $30 after launch. Will it decrease again since we have a higher seed amount? Yes. All right. So it's very important to understand what piglets represent. Piglets do not represent your share of the capital on the contract. They only represent the daily ROI that you can earn. And the price of piglets goes down every day by design. This is to offset the price impact of early buyers. So it's always fair for new capital to come on board. Now, in the piggy bank, since we were not heavily botted, early investors got a great price, of course, because they were early. And old investors or people that got in later also got a great price because by the time they got in, the price of plants had reduced due to this mechanism, which reduces the price every day, had reduced to such a degree to offset the price impact of the initial buyers. And that works very well as long as you don't have a major variance in what the initial buyers bought versus what later buyers buy. So if you have the initial buyers buy about the same amount as someone that buys, say, a week later, they're going to get about the same amount of piglets for the same amount of money because the initial buyers caused price impact, caused that price of piglets to rise, But then by the time I got to about a week later, or say, I'm just giving kind of arbitrary dates and values, but let's just say this: the price of piglets had decreased to the point where now it becomes now someone getting it with the same amount of money gets about the same amount of piglets as someone that bought in about a week before that, and this it is because piglets don't determine your share of the capital in the contract, just the amount of daily ROI you make. So you want it to always be about the same price for everybody. And when you have people buying about the same amount spread over time, this mechanic works very well. But if you have someone come in and buy $1.5 million worth of piglets on day one, and then everybody else deposits a few thousand, then their ability to compound and leach from the system is too powerful to get offset by the other mechanics. Now, this is easily solved by starting with a higher seed amount, like starting with a higher liquidity in a liquidity pool. That way, the initial buyers don't have a very large price impact. But due to the limitations in solidity, when you have multiple assets like this in one contract and solidity can't do decimals, you have to use padding to get around decimals in truffles, for example. You can't use padding then in piglets. So it means you're limited to only being able to buy whole piglets. There cannot be any decimals. You cannot buy fractions of piglets. Just like you can't buy fractions of minors, just like you can't buy fractions of plants. So the downside to starting with a high seed amount is that the price of an individual piglet is also high, and it makes it so smaller users can't even buy into the system, and they can't compound. So we came up with a solution for this, which will be implemented in V2. But these were real problems with existing protocols that needed solutions, and we came up with those solutions. So, I'm confident. I'm very confident in the V2. For one, because we already see that all of the code in V1 worked perfectly. Piggybank worked perfectly. Version 1. All of the code worked perfectly. No errors, no flaws, no freezing, pausing, nothing. Everything worked perfectly, exactly the way it should. The only issue was starting with too small of a seed amount. So, that and the inability to buy partial piglets. The inability to buy partial piglets was not an issue with our code. That's just limitations in solidity. We had come up with a solution for this that we were going to implement in V1. But since we have a chance to do V2 now, we're going to implement it from day one on V2. So people will be able to do partial piglets, and that means we can start with a high seed floor without causing those limitations on small buyers. So, due to the fact that the code itself on Piggybank worked flawlessly, we know how to we know the solution to the issue that we had, and everything else is in place to really have a powerful product. And we have the community, we have the exposure, we have the mechanics, we have the capital to fund marketing and further development. So we're ready to go, right? So I'm very excited just to get this migration done, so we can focus on marketing and the next level of development. I also mentioned that that we brought on a new developer. This was a contributing factor to the issue we had. Not the new developer we brought on is amazing. He's very skilled. He did quality control for Certic. He's super skilled, but it was we had a bit of a communication issue with the fact that my main partner BB needed to take a break, so he wasn't around. But he came in on launch day to help us with some things, and I was working with a brand new developer who I hadn't worked with before to help pick up some of our slack. But you know, in the future, it's very positive that we brought him on because he is very skilled, and now we just, it's a lesson learned. We will never set a deadline until we are 100% ready to go, and you can look at our track record. Our track record is very good, right? I've been working in crypto for 10 years, since 2012. I started working in crypto when I got, I got brought on to do a payment portal, a Bitcoin payment portal for a sports book all the way back in 2012 when they got their payment processor shut down. I've been working in crypto ever since. We've never had any kind of major exploit. We've never had any kind of major hack. We've never been scammed. I've launched dozens of contracts, many dozens of contracts, both my own and advising other projects. We've never had any kind of liquidity pull, whether it be from hackers or anything. We've had a very, very solid track record. And I would say this is the biggest road bump we've ever had. And when you look at it, it's yes, it's not ideal, but it could be worse, right? We didn't lose our liquidity. We had all of the security protocols put in place in case something unexpected happened, and as soon as something unexpected happened, they went into action, and capital wasn't lost, and we could do the migration with all of the issues solved, and full steam ahead, ready to go. And I know that DeFi and crypto in general have very short memories. So if something doesn't go ideal, you just keep working, and you have one or two solid home runs, and people completely forget about any kind of issue that's gone in the past, as long as people know that when that issue did come up in the past, it was solved. It wasn't any kind of scammery or fuckery or anything bad. It was a legitimate technical issue that was solved, and it's very easy to get right back on track as long as you have the right motives and the right work ethic and the right network and team behind you. And we're prepared to just go right back full steam ahead. I'm very excited to get this migration over so that I can focus 100% on marketing. And next will be the lottery, because the lottery is almost complete already. And then we go right into a partnership for Drip. We have several major partnerships ready to go with Drip, and I'm very excited about that. And I'll be updating as we get closer to it. But also a new UI for Drip. We built a new UI for Drip. It's finished and complete. Oh yes, one thing we need to do is start collecting testimonials for Drip, because on the front page of our new UI, we have testimonials that scroll across the front page, and it really looks smooth. So we need to start collecting some testimonials. The UI that we built for Drip is we used a template that is being used by essentially all of the high-end investment banks, Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, because we realize that these companies spend billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, in consumer research, and they spend tons of capital to figure out what gets users to their site, and when those users get to their site, to use their products. And I think we would be remiss to not use that knowledge base that they have built up. And I don't know why other DeFi projects are not, but I don't know why other DeFi projects do half of what they do. So this is something that we're going to put into action. The development for the UI has already been done. So when we do the new major launch for Drip, it will be with the new UI. So we have so much coming. I'm very confident in Drip as well. So Drip has hit its 1 year mark, which means that everybody that got into the pre-sale and everybody who bought early, who has not been compounding and has been draining the system, is hitting their max payouts. So every day, these early whales will be taken out of the system one by one, right? Not able to drain the system anymore. And as long as we continue to develop and market Drip, it can only get stronger. So Drip is a project that I'm heavily devoted to. I see Drip as the cornerstone of our community. It's what brought in the majority of our users. And I plan to continue to evolve it and continue to develop it, for years to come. So a little bit of attention has been taken off of it because we have the animal farm and the Piggybank, which we need to address right now. But markets move in cycles, and you need to have times where attention is put on projects, and then attention is moved to other other spaces to allow for weak hands to get to pull and give opportunities for the next wave of investors to come in. So this next wave of Drip is about to drop, with these new updates we're about to make, and we're gonna see a new wave of Drip users, and I'm extremely excited for that. So I'm gonna wrap this up. We're gonna do another one before Tuesday, and I'm gonna get Bartertown or another YouTuber in here because it's I can talk. Anybody that knows me knows I can talk, but just to be on here for an hour and a half by myself, just kind of going on and on. It's I don't know how interesting it is for people to listen to it. I'd be a lot more effective if I had something to bounce off of. So we'll do this again in tomorrow or Tuesday, and that's it. So I appreciate you guys all for being here. I'll be in text chat for the rest of the day. We're gonna run these simulations today. We already have the mapping. We plan on releasing all of it publicly. So all of the mapping that shows what all the accounts did, when they bought, all that, we plan to release it all public, so it's fully transparent. Everybody can see exactly what happened down to every detail and why everybody got what they got on the distribution. So we already have all that info. When we finish running the simulations, we'll know exactly what the distribution looks like, and we'll make that public as well. So thanks, everyone. Before I forget, I should also say that there is an NFT project that is going to be utilizing Drip. It's a play-to-earn game where you have characters that are represented by NFTs. One of their characters can only be bought with Drip, and all of the Drip that is used to buy these NFTs will be sent to the faucet, right? None of it will be used to to monetize the game or add sell pressure to drip, which is awesome. And we're looking they're looking to launch in about 4 weeks, something like that. And we're going to raise capital for them in the DAO group. So it will be a private sale going on in the Reap DAO in about 4 weeks or so. So that's another great opportunity. Every project we've ever had a raise for in the DAO has done over 40x. So I'm very, very careful about who I allow to raise capital in the DAO group. We do a full audit of their contracts. We make sure all of the tokenomics and all of the raise distribution, all that is just, as perfect as can be. And we're very careful about that. Also, I'm the one that handles the liquidity, the adding of liquidity, all of that once the funds are raised to ensure that they can't scam us or anything like that. That's the reason why we've had dozens and dozens of raises and never once have been scammed, never once have been rug pulled, because I set it up so it would be impossible for that to happen, because I'm the one that controls the liquidity until it's locked. And then at that point, I migrate ownership to the developers that raise the capital, that we raise capital for. So if anybody has questions about that, you go to the Drip Telegram group, do /DAO, and you'll find info about joining the DAO as well. All right, guys. I'll be on all day, so I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you. Bye.